Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. The blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media signing black in and shining again, asking you to hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So that being said, I'll try to make this very quick. There is a story I cannot prove or disprove coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. And first off, shout out to Selector J, also Jason Thompson. You can tell me if the story is true or not, but I've heard that there is, as it goes, as it was sent to me, there is an Indian Trinidadian prison guard whose Indian Trinidadian wife cheated on him with two African Trinidadian colleagues of his from the prison. And apparently, when all this came out on video, along with some nudes of her, he lit himself up and killed himself by burning himself to death. That's how it was presented to me. Again, any of you in Trinidad and Tobago can tell me if it's a lie, if it's true, or if it's just exaggeration of the truth, whichever one. So feel free to set me straight. I admit that I am commenting on what little I know from an ocean and a continent away. That being said, now that we got that out the way, there are two things we can learn from this. If the story is exactly as it was presented to me, two things we can learn. Number one, diasporan Indians hold on to their culture and their genetic distinction more when they are surrounded by black majorities than when they are in white majority countries. That's the first thing, and they do it longer. This is proof that their attitude is, generally speaking, anti-black. So that's why you will find maybe 3 generations of the Indian community in Canada. It's not because they just recently started to go. That's not why. You'll find about 3 generations that are completely Indian in Canada. The one that left India and went to Canada, their children, and then their grandchildren. And that grandchildren's generation will probably be the last generation that is unmixed from the subcontinent. And that's it. And then after that, they're mixed and they get absorbed by the greater European population of Canada. It's not only because, well, I mean, come on, they're surrounded by Europeans, they're bound to mix eventually. That's not the only reason. And I'll tell you how you can know this for yourself instead of taking my word for it. Look at Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and I'm sure I'm missing some others. Oh, yeah, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana. Now, I don't know if this is the same thing for the Indians that live in Jamaica. I'm really not sure. To what extent they ever get absorbed, I don't know. But I know that in Trinidad and Tobago and in Guyana, of places in the Caribbean, I know in those areas, they remain culturally a distinct population. Now, they started showing up in the 1800s. That's when they began to show up in these areas. So we're talking more than a century. In the British colonies on the continent and in the Caribbean. It is, again, you do not see them get absorbed in these areas. Whatever percentage of the population they make up in those areas, you do not see them get absorbed by the black population. And I'm not saying this because I want their blood so that we would have so-called better hair or anything like that. That's not why I'm ticked about this. I'm ticked because they're showing a differentiation and we're beginning to notice these things, and this is giving us a sense of blackanoia. Now, this is also why I say, black people, if you can, you must travel. I say this partially because you must travel to know the extent to which this international anti-blackness exists and to what extent it doesn't. You don't want to underestimate it, and you don't want to overestimate it either. Many of us are still reeling from the shock of finding out how extensive and how international it is, so we assume it's global, universal, with no exception. And we're in that shock, we have overestimated it. So we're not being too unguarded. The problem is that we are now mistakenly taking neutral parties as enemies, both individually and collectively. I don't care about anybody that doesn't care about us. I just don't, but because I do care about our survival. And if you came to me with a DNA report that said I was only 10% African, and all of y'all said, okay, you know what, black man, you ain't black no more. Fine. I still want you to have an equal shot at lasting and surviving as anybody else does. If there's going to be a race that's going to go extinct, I don't want it to be ours first. I don't want it to be ours ever. Even if you showed me that it's not mine, because it's just fair. Fair is fair. If the oppressors of the planet don't go extinct, and believe me, they're not going to. They're going to make a comeback even while they're becoming a minority. They're going to make a comeback. And there's going to come a day when they make up the majority of the planet. Oh, yeah. You can take that to the bank. I don't know when, but there will come that day. But in any case, you take these folks, and you will see, you will notice if you think about it, that their retention of their distinction genetically and culturally depends on how much darker than them the majority is by which they are surrounded. If all of the black Trinidadians tomorrow could turn white, the Indians would remain culturally and genetically distinct for about another 2 generations, if that much. And that would be it. I'm sorry to say that, but it would. See, now that I got that out the way, I'm going to leave that and go on to the next point. The second lesson we need to learn from this is that when you take men or women, but especially so women, from a sexually conservative culture and society, that has its advantages and its drawbacks too, because there does have to be a balance. But many culturally, or many conservative cultures sexually are also unbalanced. And some of you might think, well, look where you live. Yeah, trust me, Arabs are not sexually conservative like people from the subcontinent are. They are not. They just aren't. It's just, and their culture, they're sexually conservative, but not like people in the subcontinent. At least they have certain jokes about what husbands and wives can do. And they just have certain humorous understandings. I mean, for instance, I can be out in public and I can flirt with my wife like we're boyfriend and girlfriend, because we are boyfriend and girlfriend. It's just we're the halal boyfriend and girlfriend, that's all. And I can do this with her. Now, if somebody knows us and knows we're married, they would actually laugh about it. She can, let's say we go grocery shopping weekly, and there'll be times when I'll go up and I'll go right when she's getting the last items. I'll go and I'll hold the place in line before we get to the checkout counter. Then she'll come up with the cart. And when she walks up, I start flirting with her and I'll say, "Oh, how you doing? Assalamu alaikum. The Lord is good, isn't he? Mashallah, look what he made." I start flirting with her, right? Now, I usually do it in English. But I'll even put my arms around her waist. I said, "You and I need to trade phone numbers. We should live together." Stuff like that. Now, we could get in trouble, but we're married. So when they see that we're actually married, then the most they could say is, "Could you not flirt like this in front of people you don't know?" But they would actually I'm waiting on the day that someone comes up and is like, "Hey man, you harassing her?" And then she and I say, "No, we're actually married. He does this." Because then it's funny. It's actually hilarious amongst Arabs. When you get back into the subcontinent, and I don't mean the Indian diasporan communities, but when you get back into the subcontinent, they don't have that same sense of humor. I'm not sure about people from Bangladesh. I haven't asked them about this, but many Indians and Pakistanis don't necessarily have that same sense of humor about things of a sexual nature. It's not necessarily funny. So, consequently, what I'm saying is that they are more conservative even than Arabs when it comes to this. So, you can take someone from a sexually conservative culture and environment, and granted, I'm sure she was born and raised in Trinidad just like her husband. But the community, this shows me what she did, and his reaction shows me that the community has retained some of the sexual conservatism from back home. What's that about? Because you do not see this in the grandchildren of the ones who migrated to white countries. You may stereotype them as being sexually inexperienced, but you don't necessarily see that same sexual conservatism. You don't see that same refusal to do things like that. This shows me a lot. You will see a different attitude. You will even notice this not just amongst people from India, but you will also notice this amongst people from China. If they're surrounded by a white majority, the grandkids are probably going to mix, and they may have different opinions about that. But you put them in black environments, and they have all of a sudden it's different, especially if it's their women getting with African stock men. You will also see a double standard like this with diasporan Indians. If their men get with African women, they may say that that's unfortunate, but they don't trip as much as when an African man gets with one of their women. Then they trip. Then they got problems. It's more of a violation. Pay attention to that. But then again, that's going back to the other point the first point I made. Second point I'm making is that you will see this not just you'll see this in generally, not only amongst people coming from the Indian community, you will see this amongst people coming from sexually conservative communities. Take the Arab community, which is one, and you look at Rahaf al-Qanun. As a matter of fact, I've been through the city from which she comes because my second to last trip to Medina involved driving, and I had to go through her city on the way and back. And I got to tell you, the city, about medium sized, I guess. It didn't seem big enough to have a traffic jam. I remember seeing an Applebee's, good place to eat. Here it is, in the Gulf, Applebee's is good. So I remember seeing that, and it seems to have enough, stuff. But the point I'm making is that Rahaf al-Qanun came from a sexually conservative culture where you can have a sense of humor about it to a certain extent within reason, but you can't just go buck wild. And the funny thing is, she could get a ding-a-ling because she could say to dad, look, I'm in college, but I'm ready to get married. She could say this because she's not precluded from getting married if she wants to catch some salami at her age. She's allowed to catch some. She can get married. It's her brothers that have to graduate, then get a job and save up and all this stuff. They have to meet these impossible financial pressures in this ucked-up economy to qualify to get some halal punani. That's them. They got to walk around abstaining until God knows when. Now, they have a bit easier of a time because they could probably leave their country and marry someone from a country whose dowries they could afford. But I assume that they're under tribal pressure to not do that. I assume so. So in any case, Yeah, in any case, I'm going to straight tell y'all that you got to be on guard about this. So these environments that are sexually conservative, let's just say within, if they were balanced, that's the ideal situation. But these environments that are sexually conservative do provide a good alternative for good men, responsible men. Why is that? You can marry women from these environments. Understand you are their only sexual outlet. So you do need to take their satisfaction seriously. You do need to. Don't think you just stick it in and start moving back and forth and that's the end of it. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that if you're willing to at least take it seriously, they'll do the same for you, of course. But it certainly is a much more reasonable job than finding someone from a sexually liberal society, because as you know, she can't even pair bond with you. She just can't. You can't wife her up. You can't marry her unless she was a diamond in the rough, which is very rare. Hell, she'd probably have to hide that from you and other women, if that's the case. But these ladies that come from these sexually conservative societies can make actually excellent wives, provided you're willing to be a good husband. That is the good thing. But also understand that the pressures are popping up amongst them because there is this effort I told you about before by the toxic misandric feminists to terraform these societies into another US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Western Europe. So in actuality, men, those of you that are going to travel and go abroad for business, to see the world and to start your legacy, step it up and quicken the pace. Because only by you coming in and being these excellent husbands as rewards to these women can you offset the feminism that's being pushed, because it's being pushed. That's what Rahaf al-Qanun got into, believe you me. She was a consumer of Western propaganda because she knew exactly what to say to get exactly what she wanted, which now she's getting. Not just that haram bacon on the plate, but also that haram salami in the sheets, proven by her child while she's not married. She has done now what even her parents would not want any of her brothers to do. And it's not just because the father of the child is black. Believe you me, that's not really what upsets them that much. That's a minor inconvenience to her family. They've already disowned her, but that's a minor inconvenience. Believe you me when I tell you. They are much more appalled by the fact that she left Islam, went to Canada, is consuming all these things, and then had a child out of wedlock. That is the major thing. Some of you might say, I know they're mad because she had that baby by that black man. No, they're mad because she had a baby out of wedlock with a non-Muslim. But this is after she already left Islam herself. She can't go back. If a child grows up and then says, well, I want to be Muslim, he could probably go back and meet them, but he can't bring her with him. I don't remember if she had a son or daughter, but in any case, I just want y'all to understand these two lessons. Number one, you can see that amongst the Indian community, they do hold on to their cultural and genetic distinctions when they're surrounded by people darker than themselves. And you will see this, you'll see that even here. One lady, theoretically speaking, did not hold on to this, got caught on camera, as the story goes. And the husband went even further by grabbing onto a tradition from back home that normally was not practiced by men and practiced it on himself. And I'm not blaming that husband for the grief that he felt. Not at all. I'm simply saying that the fact that he was probably the seventh generation in his family living in a majority black context did not serve to stop him from doing something that black folk generally don't do. One, commit suicide, but two, definitely by fire. We don't do. African, Caribbean, or North American. And he did it. And that shows you, again, the way that they view black folks, even when they live amongst us. And also, second lesson being that when you take people, men or women, but especially so the women, from these sexually conservative environments and you drop them off in a sexually liberated environment, oh my Lord, just be ready. It's not going to be that every last one of them is going to do this. I don't know if they're a minority or a majority. What I do know is that the ones that buck against that are going to go all out full pork ham, hog ham. That's what I do know. They're going to do like this wife. They're going to do like Rahaf al-Qanun. They're going to do everything that they were taught is a taboo. And black men, notice, in both of these cases, you were the ones sought after. In both of these cases, they were seeking you. The wife in Trinidad and Tobago, and Rahaf al-Qanun, now in Canada. Got her a shine, boy. She took a shine to a shine. Shout out to David Carroll for making that something I could say as a compliment. Yeah. I'm going to tell y'all straight. You got to watch out for this, bros. Make sure that you are not the one, and don't think that's a compliment either. Make sure you're not the one that they're using to rebel against any of the anti-black conservatism sexually that exists amongst their people. Make sure you're not. That's part of why I told you all. Leave non-black Arab women alone. Their people have a problem with us, not to the level of dehumanization, but just to the level of thinking that we're less attractive maritally or sexually. So leave them alone. Unless, of course, she's willing to leave and go and stay with you as a wife in a black context, not a girlfriend. That's part of why I told you, leave the Indians and the Pakistani and the Afghan and the Persian women alone. That's why I've said to you, leave that mayonnaise, Becky, Karen, and Amber alone. That's why I've said it. You ain't necessarily accomplishing nothing. I mean, you are offending the white supremacist sensibilities of their people, and I don't have a problem with you doing that. But when you sit up here and you're willing to fornicate with their women, even if you're willing to marry their women, but you live with them, surrounded by them, you subject yourself to a disadvantage. No. If you think that you got an individual that's a good one, don't fornicate with her. You put it all on the table. Look, okay, we like each other. We're willing to get married. I'm going to be living in this black land, this black context, this black environment over here. That's why I can do better. Are you coming with me? I mean, you know what? Let's say you can't find a black environment where you can also make the money to support a family. Fine. An environment away from her people. Just that. You're not going to live in India or in an Indian community abroad, or a Persian or an Afghan or Pakistani or an Arab community abroad or one of their nations. Just put that on the table and see what happens. Do they go for that? If they insist on being in a context in which their people are the majority and they surround you, they're not serious. Thank you for listening. Black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.